right, so we'll continue from last week. So I'm guessing we will require another week to complete this article. But let's see how we go. So the last place we stopped is the sentence وَأَزْعَجَ سُكَّانَهَا, right? So the context or the siyaq, or what we call siyaq in Arabic, is still the human being and their inventions and discoveries, right? So the last thing the author was talking about is the human being diving into the oceans and finding all these jewels and pearls, and annoying its inhabitants, or displacing. Az'aja in common Arabic or in spoken Arabic means to annoy someone, to disturb someone, but it also means that one of its root meanings is to take something out of its original place, or displace it or misplace it, and this is what it's referring to here. Okay, so the context is still that, and that is in the ocean or in the seas or waters. And keep in mind, as I said in the beginning, a lot of the sentence structures are jumla fi'liyas in this paragraph. It's what the human being did and the object. Okay, so the fa'il is usually hidden because it's still referring to the insan, to the human, and then it's fi'il, fa'il, and maf'ul bihi. Okay, so we really have to just learn the meanings. For example, the next one, وَنَبَشَ. So وَنَبَشَ, this is fi'il mudari', and if you look at the vocab list, نَبَشَ يَنْبُشُ نَبْشًا, this is from the bab نَصَرَ يَنْصُرُ. It means to dig up, to excavate, exhume, remove something that is underneath or under the earth, right, under the land. They use this word nabasha to also mean exhume a body, but it also has the meaning of digging up or excavating something that is underneath the ground or underneath the earth. Okay. وَنَبَشَ, the fi'al is nabasha, and the mudari is yanbushu nabshan, so the belongs to nasara yansuru. So what did the human being dig up or excavate? This is a jama' word, dafa'inaha. Okay, so the actual word is dafa'in, right? It stops on the noon, dafa'in. Dafa'in is, so some of you may have heard of dafan or dafin, and that refers to being buried. Where was it? Yeah. So if you look at this word here, dafin, and dafin is a singular form. If I say someone is dafin, what that means is that something or someone is buried under the ground. Okay. Another word for it is madfoon. So dafin and madfoon have the same meaning. Dafa'in is just plural. So things that are buried, or objects that are buried under the ground. Okay, dafa'in. We put a fatha on the noon because it's maf'ul bihi for nabasha. Right? Dafa'ina ha, and the ha is just referring back to, in other words, it's buried objects, you can say, or it's buried. Objects is fine. Okay, dafa'inaha is like kitabuha, her book, right? Dafa'inaha, it's buried objects. Wa nabasha dafa'inaha. Okay, and then we have wa talabaha. Before I go into that, notice how this book has included the commas. Do you notice the commas? So there's a comma here, right? This is the Arabic comma. There's a comma here. But what the actual author has done is that he's followed the non-punctuation style of Arabic, which is the classical style, and that's to include the wa. Okay, wa az'aja, wa nabasha, wa salabaha, wa ghalabaha, wa nafadha. So you have to decide whether this will mean a comma or it's an and. Okay, I mean waw has other usages as well, but in terms of when you see waw occurring a lot, most likely it's a comma. So this editor has made it easy for us, and he's included the comma. Okay, this is a modern thing in Arabic, but don't let those vowels throw you off, because in classical Arabic, the waw was used to also mean what we understand now as a comma. Okay, so if the commas were not there, don't just translate everything with and. Okay, so that's actually these vowels are actually commas. All right. وأزعج سكانها ونبش دفائنها. And then the next one is وسلبها. وسلبها. So سلب, the fi'al سلب is also a ثلاثي مجرد, and I'll just bring it up here. So سلب يسلب, same as نبش ينبش, same bab of نصر ينصر. The masdar is سلبا. Okay, I mean it happens that both of the masdars here are the same, نبش ينبش نبشا, right? سلب يسلب سلبا, the pattern, the wazn is the same, but that's not always the case. And the masdar doesn't have a fixed pattern for the thulathi mujarrad, and we already know that. So what does salaba mean? Salaba is a strong word. It means to take by force, right? To loot, to pillage, right? So it's not just a normal taking or stealing sometimes, but it's doing it by force. And you will hear this verb used in the news when you see riots and or there is a revolt, or if the army invades another place, they will say sadab al-jaysh, right? So the army took property or land by force. Okay. So here he's saying salabaha. It's already bringing a maf'ul bihi here. So he's saying, so the author is saying, the human being took by force, right? Took them by force. What is them? Kunuzaha. Okay, this is another style of saying, like he didn't really have to bring the maf'ul bihi. He could have just said, and note this because this is somewhat common. He could have just said salaba kunuzaha. Okay, and the meaning would have been, and kunuz means treasures. It's the jama of kanz. I think we've come across it before. Have I included it again? Yeah, I have. So kanz and kunuz, okay, means treasure. So kanz is the singular form, kunuz is the plural form, treasures. Okay. So going back to this statement, he could have said salaba kunuzaha, just a simple fi'l fa'il maf'ul bihi, right? And the human being, he took by force its treasures. But sometimes some verbs, and you know this through the dictionary, we don't have to cover it here, but some verbs can take two maf'ul bihis. All right, and those of you who have studied the more advanced subjects, this is something you would have come across. Some verbs can take two maf'ul bihis, like the verb salaba. Right, salaba can take two maf'ul bihis. So here he's saying wasalabaha kunuzaha. So it might sound a bit awkward in English, and when we translate it, we don't even consider this because it's not something we use in English, right? But the closest thing I can give you is like this. You can say, and he, in other words, the human being, took it by force, comma, its treasures. See, it's a little bit awkward, right? But you might, think it's okay. It may come like this in English, I'm not sure. But the literal meaning would be, and he took them, or these kunuz, because the maf'ul bihi is actually he. So this is the object, right? The it is coming afterwards. So and the human being, and he took it, comma, or he took it by force, comma, the treasures. Okay, so that's the closest thing I think we can say in English. But that's still not very good translation or good understanding. We just say, and the human being took the treasures by force, okay, or looted the treasures, right? And we don't even consider the ha. It's a requirement in Arabic. You can do it, but we don't need to follow that in English as well. Okay, so I hope that was clear, because the next one also has a similar similar usage. Okay, so salabaha kunuzaha. All right, so far he digged, what was underneath the grounds. He took by force its treasures. وَغَلَبَهَا. They already bringing a ha here. وَغَلَبَهَا. What does غَلَبَ mean? We go back to our mufradat. غَلَبَ يَغْلِبُ غَلَبَةً. So this bab is from ضَرَبَ يَضْرِبُ, right? And the meaning that we're talking about here is when the verb غَلَبَ is used with ala. Okay? It's when you see غَلَبَ used with ala, it has this meaning, to overpower someone or something, right? You will hear this in sports. They will say سأغلب عليك, right? In other words, I'll win against you, or I will overpower you in the game. Okay? So غلب على means to overpower someone or something. So in this context, وغلبها, right? What do you think the ha is referring to? وغلبها, and he overpowered it. Is the masdar power? غلبة would be, not power, more overpowering. غلبة would be overpowering, yeah. Referring to bihar, referring to treasures. Yeah, but it's more accurately, the maf'ul bihi is actually mentioned afterwards. Right, just like we had it here. Salabaha, and he took it by force. What did he take by force? Its treasures. And he overpowered it. What did he overpower it? لَآلِئِهَا. So this word is, you have to know the meaning first. It comes from the word lu'lu'a or lu'lu', which some of you may have heard it. Lu'lu' and la'ali refer to pearl. Okay, so la'ali is the jama' of lu'lu'. Sometimes you might hear lu'lu'a, which is a singular or one pearl. Lu'lu' itself is anyway considered as a singular as well. But the thing we're interested in is this word, la'ali. Okay, la'ali is the plural of lu'lu', and it means pearls. It means pearls. Okay. وَغَلَبَهَا عَلَى لَآلِي. What will the haraka be? It will be kasra. Why? Because of the harf jar, right? وَغَلَبَهَا عَلَى لَآلِئِهَا وَجَوَاهِرِهَا. So the actual word is jawahir, stops on the ra, but the ra takes a kasra here because it's ma'tuf. Right? So, and what does jawahir mean? Okay, I haven't included here because we've come across it before, I think. So what does jawhar mean? Does anyone remember? Jewels. Exactly. Right? It means jewels. Basically precious stones. Okay? Jawhar is a precious stone or gem. Okay, so, and he overpowered it. What did he overpower? On, right? So the ghalaba ala, these come together. So you don't need to translate the ala separately. And that's why in the vocab list I put it together, because together it means ghalaba ala, together it means to overpower someone. Okay, so you don't translate the ala separately, like, so don't consider. So ghalabaha ala, and he overpowered. What did he overpower? And he overpowered over its pearls and its treasures. Okay, and he overpowered. If you would really want to translate it literally, you will say, and he overpowered it, comma, its pearls and its treasures. Okay, or you can say, and he overpowered, comma, its pearls and its treasures. Does that make sense? Right. So this is another way of a jumla fi'liya where you potentially could have two maf'ul bihis or two objects, but in English it's not a requirement in that sense of the word. Okay, so if this ha wasn't there, it would have been very clear. So let's say if this ha wasn't there, then it wouldn't have been a problem at all. We would have said وَغَلَبَ عَلَى لَآلِئِهَا وَجَوَاهِرِهَا, and he overpowered its pearls and its treasures. Right? Yeah, and he overpowered in the sense that, you know, he took them, right? They couldn't resist. You know, the human being went and he discovered these treasures, these pearls, and غَلَبَ عَلَيْهَا, right? He overpowered that, he took it, there was no resistance. So if the ha wasn't there, it would have been much clearer, but just keep in mind that it doesn't really affect our understanding, but there are some verbs that require two objects, two maf'ul bihis in Arabic. And the very common verb, which you will probably always hear in examples, is actually these two verbs, which is kind of cool. The salaba and the ghalaba. They will bring these examples to say that these two verbs, as an example, they require two maf'ul bihis. Okay, they require two maf'ul bihis. So if that was a difficult discussion to understand, it's okay. If you haven't covered it, it'll come up in one of the advanced or later subjects. Is that clear up to here, everybody? Mafhum, inshallah? So basically, simple jumla fi'liyas, all we had to learn really is the new words. All good? Tamam, jayyid. So once again, here we're starting with another verb, وَنَفَذَ, right? So many af'al. So نَفَذَ means, نَفَذَ يَنْفُذُ نُفُوذًا means to penetrate or to pass through. Right? To penetrate or to pass through. So let's say if there's a very small creek, or if there are mountains and there's a small passage through, and you just penetrated through, or you just passed through, right? So it indicates difficulty of some difficulty of passage, not that straightforward. So nafadha yanfudu means to pass through something, okay? To pass through or to penetrate something. Okay, so what is he saying here? وَنَفَذَ, and he penetrated or passed through min bayni, right? Min bayni, from between al-ahjar wal-akam. Okay, we need to look at these words. So ahjar, this is the plural. Ahjar means stones. The singular one is hajar. Probably came across it in one of your Arabic units. Hajar and ahjar. Okay, it means stones. And akama means a hill. It can also refer to an elevation, an elevated land. And akam is the plural. You can say hills. Okay. So what did he do? He penetrated from, and I'm translating it literally, okay? And he, or not and, comma, he penetrated from between the rocks or the stones and the hills to ila al-qurun. Al-qurun, qurun means age, generation, and it also has the meaning of 1 century, a century. Okay, the singular form is qarn. Qarn, and this is used a lot in the Quran as well. Qarn and qurun means generations, right? Past ages. In the modern Arabic, qarn is also referred to a century. Okay, 100 years. So in Arabic, there's a way of saying, you can say al-qurun al-madiya. So madi, you know, like we say fi'al madi. Fi'al madi means past tense. If you say al-qurun al-madiya, it means the past centuries or the past ages or the past generations. Okay? Al-khaliya, khali means empty. Okay, khali means empty. But another way of saying past generations in Arabic is to say al-qurun al-khaliya. Right? I'm not sure exactly why they would use that. We'll have to find that out. But I've included it as part of the expressions. right? Al-Qurun al-Khaliya, past generations or bygone time, time that has gone. Okay, so keep this in mind because this is also used quite frequently in the language. Al-Qurun al-Khaliya, but you will also hear Al-Qurun al-Madiya as well. Okay, Al-Qurun al-Madiya as well. So what is he saying here? He's saying he penetrated. Now, instead of saying min bayni, from between, what do you think would be a good understanding here? And he penetrated or passed through min bayna. Is there another better way to say it? From between. I mean, the literal meaning is from between. Do you guys think there would be, a better way of saying it in English or understanding it in English? So he penetrated from between the rocks or the stones and the hills towards the past generations. Right? I think a word like through maybe would probably be better. What do you guys think? So he penetrated through, right? Like through these rocks and these hills. Here the hills are, or elevations, they're specifically referring, most likely, the author is referring, because he lives in Egypt. You know how in Egypt there are so many of these, you can say tombs. They have like it's almost like a hill. It's like a bit half circular in shape. There's all these relics, right? So living in Egypt, he's probably referring to those things. So through these rocks and through these elevated objects, the human being has been able to travel to or penetrate through the past generations. Does that make sense? So he used these objects, he used these stones to penetrate, to pass through, as if it was like a time machine, and he penetrated through this time machine, looking at the past. Okay, looking at the past. And he also gives further information. So he says, he penetrated through these objects to the past generations. What did he see? Fara'a, right? Fara'a, fa means so. Ra'a is to see. Don't think I've included it here because we've come across it before. Yeah. So ra'a yara means to see. Fara'a. So he saw, right? The human being saw. What did he see? Ashabaha. Ashabaha. Is ashabaha plural or singular? Ashab. It has a plural pattern as well. Ashab, that pattern of af'al. Usually if a word is long, quite long, it's a good indication that it's a plural. The singular form, I don't think I've included this because I guess oh no, I did, okay. So ashab is people or companions, okay? It can mean either. Sahib is the singular one. Ashab is the plural form. Sometimes this word sahib has other meanings. If I say sahibul bayt, right, it can also mean the owner or the one who owns something. If I say sahibul bayt, let's say in the classroom, if I see a book, I could say man sahib hadha al-kitab, right? Who's the possessor or the owner of this book? And a student can say ana sahibuhu, right? So sahib has a few meanings, and they're common meanings to know. But here in this context, it means it's people or it's companion, but mostly people. I put companions because it's another very common meaning is companions as well. If I say ashabi, it means my friends or my companion. Okay? Very similar to asdiqai. Okay. So fara'a ashabaha. So he saw its people, right? What is he referring to here? Which people is he referring to? So he saw its people. What people is he referring to here? In what context? It's the past generations, isn't it? So he penetrated through these rocks, stones and these tombs and so on, and by science, analyze, dissect, understand, and then predict how they lived in the past. So he's saying as if they traveled by time to the past, and then he saw فَرَأَى أَصْحَابَهَا, he saw its people, وَعَرَفَ, right, and he recognized or he found out كَيْفَ يَعِيشُونَ. Take a breather because you're finally coming across words that you're probably familiar with. وَعَرَفَ كَيْفَ يَعِيشُونَ. And he found out how they were living. كَيْفَ يَعِيشُونَ. عَاشَ يَعِيشُ means to live. وَعَرَفَ كَيْفَ يَعِيشُونَ. وَأَيْنَ يَسْكُنُونَ. And where they are living. Right? سَكَنَ يَسْكُنُ. We've come across this verb a lot, especially for those who are doing 442 with me. سَكَنَ يَسْكُنُ is a very common verb, right? So, وَأَيْنَ يَسْكُنُونَ. And where they are living. وَمَاذَا يَأْكُلُونَ وَيَشْرَبُونَ. Right? And what they are eating and drinking. Right? So up to here, I haven't included any of the vocab because this is something that I would expect you to know at least most of it. So one more time. فَرَأَى أَصْحَابَهَا وَعَرَفَ كَيْفَ يَعِيشُونَ وَأَيْنَ يَسْكُنُونَ وَمَاذَا يَأْكُلُونَ وَيَشْرَبُونَ. Are these questions? Is he asking questions here? Because these words are usually question words. كَيْفَ, أَيْنَ, مَاذَا. These are not questions, right? These are stating facts. How they lived, right? Where they lived, and what they ate and what they drank. Okay, you use the same words as questioning words, but the meaning or intent, or the gharad, in Arabic they call the gharad, is different. The objective is different. Okay, so up to that point, I think it was good breather, it was easy verbs. We've come across them before. Now we go back to the hard ones. Not hard ones, but new ones. When you don't come across something, it's always that fear of the unknown. Okay, so then what's the next verb? The next verb is tasarraba, and the editor has been kind enough to include something there. Tasarraba, right? What verb does it belong to? Tasarraba, the higher verb form. Form number 5, Irfan says. I think so. تقبل يتقبل. تسرب يتسرب. Right? تسرب يتسرب, the root letters are sin, ra, and ba. And what that means is تسرب يتسرب تسربا. So I've included the fi'l here. It means to trickle, right? Or to creep into. You know how when we say the water is trickling down, right? Or we say sometimes the water is creeping into, let's say, the rocks or into something. That's what tasarraba means. Okay, tasarraba. What tasarraba, and he crept into. Remember, it's a past tense. Students always confuse form number 5 with present tense because why? Why do you guys think that it's easily confusable with a present tense verb? Why is form number 5's past tense easily confused with a present tense? Yes, ta is one, but also if there is no harakat, what does it look like? It looks like exactly like a fi'l mudari' of a thalathi mujarrad, right? It's as if it's saying, for example, saraba, yasrabu, that probably tasrabu. Okay, so here you have to obviously entertain certain possibilities when there's no harakat. And that's exactly the reason why the author has put a shadda there. Or not the author, but the editor. Okay, to tell you that, hey, this is form number 5. Okay, don't think it's a mudari'. So the moment we see the shadda, there is no second thought. We immediately know that this is a past tense, form number 5. And obviously the ta. The ta is also a big problem because we use the ta for many verbs for the mudari'. Right? The past tense doesn't really start with the ta. There aren't many verbs that start with a ta, especially the pattern, right? We have sarrafa or fa'ala. We do have tafa'ala, taqabala, yataqabalu. So just form number 5 and form number 6, is somewhat problematic sometimes. So just take note of that. وَتَسَرَّبَ, and he crept. Okay, he crept from where? From manafidh. Okay, manafidh. Does this sound like a singular word or a plural word? Manafidh. Mafa'il. It definitely sounds like a plural, right? Anything that has especially an alif and a sound and looks long, it means it's a plural form. Okay. All right. So here we have manfadh, and manafidh means outlet or an access. That's okay, good enough. Can someone tell me how do we say a window in Arabic? Does anyone remember? Window. We've covered it in the earlier subjects. Shabak is one. There's another one.
Nafiza.
Nafiza. Right? Shabak is also window. That's another word for it. But another word for it is also nafiza. And why is nafiza used? Because with nafiza, you have access to the other side, or you can see the other side, right? Or it's an outlet. That's what manfadh means. So one of its root meanings is a passage through, an opening, right? An outlet, an access. So then nafidha, window, means an outlet, an opening, an access, right? So here manfadh is used more based on its root meanings in this context. وَتَثَرَّبَ, and he crept, the human being, from the windows of al-hawas. Okay, al-hawas. This is also a plural word, and I've included the meaning here. So hasa is the singular form, meaning sense, more specifically human sense. Okay, the senses, the human senses, and hawas is the plural. So he crept from the window or the opening or the passage or the outlet of the senses. In other words, he used the senses. Al-hawas al-zahira. You may have come across this word before. What does al-zahir mean? Al-zahir. I think we came across it even last week. The opposite is batin. In and out, not hidden. Yep. So we can say apparent, right? So zahir is apparent, which is the opposite of batin. Batin means hidden. Zahir means apparent. These are also two names that is mentioned in the Quran as well, referring to Allah, right? Al-Zahir, Al-Batin. These are two names. Al-Zahir, the apparent, Al-Batin, the hidden. And in this context, Zahir is apparent or outward or visible, and Batin, I've included here as well. The next one, Batin, is inward or hidden. Okay? So once again, important common word. So he crept from the windows of the outward senses. Okay, I'm translating literally, we'll come to the meaning, but you probably understand the meaning anyway. And he crept from the windows or from the outlets of the apparent senses towards al-hawasil batina, to the inner senses. What is he trying to say here? Can someone just summarize it? What is he trying to say here? From known to unknown? Okay. He will actually answer it, but we can just, I guess, preempt it. From known to unknown, that's one thing, which is true because he it is going from a known to an unknown. So let's see what he says. Let's see what he means. The good thing is sometimes they do explain what they mean. The hard part is when they don't, and then you have to keep on guessing, right? Okay, فَعَرَفَ, so he found out, or he knew, right? By the way, hawas is plural, and that's why we use singular feminine, right? So that famous rule, everybody, is for a non-human plural, we use singular feminine to refer to it or to give it an adjective, or if we use a verb for it, we have to use singular feminine, okay? And that's why the singular feminine has been used here, al-zahira. فَعَرَفَ, so he learned. Arafa means to learn, to recognize, to know as well. فَعَرَفَ, so he learned or he knew النفوس. النفوس is I haven't included here. It's a common one. What does nufus mean? Nufus. Yeah, one meaning is souls. The singular is nafs. It could mean oneself, right? Souls, nafs, oneself. It could also mean the ego sometimes when we say nafs. Nafs can also mean ego. So if I say nafsi, it means myself. Nafsi means myself, right? Nafs can also mean the ego. It can mean the inner self. Yeah, it's closely related to desires when it's used in the context of ego, right? Nafs and desire is sometimes almost used synonymously, especially when the textbooks are about spirituality and human psychology and so on. They have this idea of the nafs and the desires, the hawa. They call it the hawa, right? But in simple terms, nafs refers to the self. Okay, nafs refers to the self. So here is saying, the author is saying, فَعَرَفَ, so he learned or he knew, النفوس, the selves, in other words, the humans, that the inner selves, وَطَبَائِعَهَا. Does this sound like a plural word or a singular word? طَبَائِع. طَبَائِع. Okay, that's definitely plural. Too long for it to be singular. Okay, what does طَبَائِع mean? طَبَائِع is, maybe some of you have heard the singular one, طَبِيعَة, right? Has anyone heard of طَبِيعَة before? Character, yeah. It has a few meanings. Character, the nature of someone. طَبِيعَة also means, it actually means nature as well. In English we say the nature, the scenery, right? You know how we say the nature is so beautiful? In Arabic, that's also used that way. So we can say at-tabi'a, in other words, the outward sceneries, the outward nature. But tabi'a can also mean tabi'atun nafs, refers to the nature of someone, the character of a person. Okay, when we say taba'i', it means the characters or the natures of people. Okay, so hopefully that was understood. So now hopefully this previous sentence makes sense, that he crept through. So basically the human being has these senses, right? So he used these senses to creep into the inner senses. So the human being used his outer senses, right? By observing, by analyzing, by studying, right? And he crept into the inner senses, right? And what did he find out? He found out about the nufus, فَعَرَفَ النُّفُوس, and he learned about the self and its natures or its characters. Does that make sense? Is everyone understanding the imagery here? So you're basically using your senses, your outer senses, to understand the inner workings of the human being, the thoughts, the emotions, the character of someone, right? The temperament of a person. Basically what we call perhaps psychology in this day and age, right? Psychology is studying the inner knowledge or workings of the self. فَعَرَفَ النُّفُوسَ, and nufus, as I said, is the jama' of nafs, وَطَبَائِعَهَا, and we covered that as well. What else did he learn? وَالْعُقُولَ. Right? So here he's saying فَعَرَفَ. So this عَرَفَ continues based on the context. فَعَرَفَ النُّفُوسَ وَطَبَائِعَهَا وَالْعُقُولَ. And this also takes a fatha because it's مفعول به معطوف to النفوس. Right? So عرف النفوس first, وطبائعها second, والعقول third, ومذاهبها fourth. Okay, so they're all connected to that verb عرف. والعقول. What does عقول mean? I haven't included it here. So this is, I think we came across it before. Anyone remembers? Minds, right? عقل and عقول.
Intelligence.
Intelligence is another one. Intellect, it can mean intellect as well. Aql is the brain. Sometimes they use it for the brain, although mukh is more better to use for brain. But sometimes it's used for brain. But really, aql is where the this idea of yaqilun happens. This idea of reasoning, understanding, rationalizing. Right? That's so when we talk about the aql, we're talking about that part of the human being that rationalizes things, right? That reasons and tries to understand. Okay, so here he is saying the human being understood or learned the intellects وَمَذَاهِبَهَا. مَذَاهِبَهَا. So these are all plural words, and madhahib is the jama' of madhab, right? Madhab. You may have heard of this word as well. Madhab means a pathway, or it could just mean a way, a particular way. What do you think is the root words? Very common word. Madhab, madahib. Madhab. In terms of sarf, even what kind of a word is it in terms of sarf? So dhahaba, dha, ha, and ba. Very good. So in terms of sarf, what kind of a word is this? Madhab. Ism zarf. Alright, so zarf, ism zaman or makan. Excellent, very good. So madhab is on the pattern of maf'al. Maf'al, right? From the thulathi mujarrad. So we say, like if you've memorized your sarf table, you will go like this. ذهب يذهب ذهبا, the masdar. فهو ذاهب, right? ذاهب is the ism fa'il. مذهوب is the maf'ul. And then ism zaman wa makan is madhhab. Just like masjid, right? Masjid, madhhab. That pattern maf'al refers to the place or the time where the action takes place. Okay, like masjid is the place of sujud, makanu sujud, right? And madhhab is basically, you can say, the place of walking, right? In other words, a pathway, right? Madhhab is a pathway. Okay. And madhhab has a technical meaning in Islamic jurisprudence or Islamic law. Madhhab is a school of law, right? We call a school of law or a school of jurisprudence as a madhhab because that's one pathway, right? So that also comes to that meaning. Okay, so what did he understand? He understood. He learned. He learned the human or the selves, the human being. In other words, ourselves. The al-uqula, the minds, the intellects, وَمَذَاهِبَهَا, and its pathways. In other words, basically how the mind works, right? وَالْمَدَارِكَ. Okay, so continuing. Okay, let me just delete this here. وَالْمَدَارِكَ وَمَرَاكِزَهَا, and za because it's still ma'tuf. What does madarik mean? Madrak is a singular form and madarik is the plural. This is the source of the sense in the human being. Usually they refer to, it's a bit of a scientific term. So the madrak Actually, this is cool because this is also a ism makan. What do you think are the root letters of this madrak? I think you're meant to have that in Arabic. Dal, Ra, and okay, translate it in English. So Dal, Ra, and Kaf. Dark. You know dark? Daraka. When you say the fi'al daraka, it means that he what's the good word for it in English? Like he understood. Yeah, I guess understanding is one, but there's a slight difference between fahima and daraka. Right? Daraka, let's say it means understood as well. Or perceives, realizes, yeah. Perceiving or realizing is probably, that's what I was looking for. Madrak is the place of perceiving or realizing, right? And in this context, it refers to like وَالْمَدَارِكْ وَمَرَاكِزَهَا, like markaz, you may have heard of this before as well. Markaz and marakiz refers to place, area, or position, location as well sometimes. In spoken Arabic, markaz refers to a center as well. Like if I say Isra, for example, the organization, I will say markaz Isra, right? Isra center. Okay, but markaz, it really means it's a place or a position, right? Where something is. So here he is saying madarik. So madarik is the source of sense in the human being, because madarak is the place of perceiving, right? And the place of perceiving in the human being is the brain, right? So once again, this is most likely the intention of the author, right? وَالْمَدَارِكَ وَمَرَاكِزَهَا. And the sources, or let's say, and the, or these areas of perceiving in the brain and its locations. You know how in the brain we have a particular place, location for smelling, there's another location for rationalizing, right? Speaking, speech. And that's why stroke and these things are difficult, because if they hit one part of the brain, let's say the part where it deals with speaking, and obviously I'm using very simple terms, the person is unable to speak. So that is a madrak of speaking, a source of speaking, and the markaz is that particular location in the brain. Okay, so I hope I haven't lost you. I really hope I haven't. But really he's saying that he's understood, how the brain works, how the intellect works, the pathways, it's sources of perceiving, sources of information, and so on. Okay, so up to that point, it was all about how the human being not only understands the outward, but also understands what happens inside the human being. Okay. Hatta, what does hatta mean? Hatta, until. Is there another word for it? In order to, yes, to. There's another popular meaning for hatta as well. Very good. Even. Okay. This is sometimes used to put someone down, right? Let's say if someone passed the exam, and you can say hatta ant, even you passed, right? So it can have that meaning. Hatta can mean until. Like the Quran says, Salamun hiya hatta matla'il fajr. Right? It's peaceful until the coming of the dawn. Hatta can also mean in order to, or to. I can say استيقظت مبكرا حتى أدرس. I woke up early in order to, or to study. Okay, it has a few meanings. So in this context, hatta, so so the human being learned all this. Hatta kada. Has anyone come across kada before? Kada. Sister of kana, correct? But what's the meaning? Anyone come across the meaning before? Kada. Very, very useful word to remember. Yeah, almost. Good. So here I have put the verb kada yakadu. Okay, the masdar is hardly ever used, so there's no need to even learn it. Kada yakadu means to almost perform an action, but doesn't happen. Be on the point of. Right? For example, you can say, kada al-waladu an yasquta. The boy was almost about to fall, but he didn't. In other words, it didn't happen. Okay? So to almost perform an action, but it doesn't happen. Right? So here he is saying, hatta kada. Let's see what he says after that, and then we'll come back to understand these two words better. Hatta kada yasma'u. We know what yasma'u means. Yasma'u haditha. Hadith, we know is speech. Hadith al-nafsi. Right, there's an idafa phrase. Wadabib. Wadabib al-muna. Okay. So سمع يسمع حتى كاد يسمع حديث النفس. Hadith النفس. Hadith means speech and nafs means self. Right? What do you think he's referring to here? Hadith النفس, the speech of the self. حتى كاد. We can say حتى even almost hearing hadith al-nafs. What could hadith al-nafs refer to here? The speech of the self, but what does that mean? Hadith al-nafs. The conscience? Yeah, it's the thoughts. It's more the thoughts, isn't it? The hadith al-nafs is the speech of the self. You know, when you speak to yourself in your mind, your thoughts basically. Right? He's saying hatta kada. Did it happen? When we say kada, did it happen? It didn't happen. But it's almost as if he's saying even almost the point, kada yasma'u, he almost heard, or he almost hears, the human being, hadith al-nafs, the speech of the self. This is the inner speech that we talk to ourselves. Wa dabib al-muna. This is something new, dabib al-muna. This is more of an expression. Okay? Dabib al-muna. So hadith al-nafs, I've included it here in the expressions. Hadith al-nafs, literally it means speech of the self. Meaning is inner thoughts. Okay, inner thoughts. Dabib al-muna, look at the literal meaning, okay? It says creeping of wishes and hopes. You know, dabib means like crawling. You know, dabba yadubbu means to crawl, right? That's why when we say dabba, the Quran use وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. So dabba means a living object that crawls, right? That crawls on four, I guess, hands and feet, right? So dabib means to crawl or creep. Muna, we came across it before. Umniya is another word for wish. So it's the creeping of wishes or hopes. Meaning, so that's the literal meaning, but the meaning is inner hopes and wishes. So the human being, hatta kada, even he was almost about to hear the inner thoughts and inner wishes of the human beings. Does that make sense, everyone? Was that clear? So you will usually hear these things together. Hadith al-nafs and dabib al-muna. You will hear them, like you can say that they're an expression together. Okay, so let's aim to finish this because the rest is not that hard. واخترق اخترق يخترق means to break through. Okay, to break through. Another meaning is penetrate through, which is we came across another verb that has similar meaning. اخترق يخترق means to break through, right? To pierce through something. So here he says واخترق, and he pierced through, right? بذكائه, with ذكائه. ذكاء means intelligence. ذكاء means intelligence. And he pierced through with his intelligence. What did he pierce through? كل حجاب. كل حجاب. What does that mean? كل حجاب. Have I included hijab here? Yes. Hijab. So hijab in, I guess, in the usage today is most likely you will, the first thing that will come to your mind is the head covering that a woman wears, right? But hijab is also a veil or an obstacle. Okay, hijab, in its root meanings, or some of its root meanings, is an obstacle. It's a covering. It's a veil. Okay, but in this context, perhaps obstacle is the best meaning to choose. وَاخْتَرَقَ بِذَكَائِهِ, and he pierced through every hijab, every obstacle, right? Everything that came on its way, he pierced through it by his intelligence, بِذَكَائِهِ. وَفَتَحَ, and he opened the human being. وَفَتَحَ كُلَّ بَابٍ. See? فعل فاعل مفعول به. مفعول به is an إضافة phrase. وَفَتَحَ كُلَّ بَابٍ, and he opened every door. وَلَكِنَّهُ, what does وَلَكِنَّهُ mean? وَلَكِنَّهُ, but he, or however he, right? Either one's okay. However he, the human being, سقط, and سقط, the verb means سقط يسقط. سقوطا means to stumble or to fall down. Okay, it means to stumble or to fall down. ولكنه سقط, however he stumbled or fell down, أمام, in front of, the door of tomorrow. However he stumbled upon the door of tomorrow, or you can say tomorrow's door. Okay, he stumbled upon it. In what state? Okay, this is what we call hal, for those who studied hal. What was the human being's state while doing this? عاجزا مقهورا, right? And ajiz and maqhur mean, ajiz means helpless, maqhur means defeated, overpowered, or overcome, right? So here the author is saying, وَلَكِنَّهُ, however he, the human being, he stumbled upon the door of tomorrow, عاجزا مقهورا, helpless, defeated, right? Overpowered, overcome. لا يجرأ, right? جرأ يجرأ means to have the guts to do something, have the courage to, be bold enough, be daring. لا يجرأ, يجرؤ, sorry. جرؤ يجرؤ. This is a rare form of a verb. What verb does this belong to? جرؤ يجرؤ, جرأة. It's one of those rare ones. Remember the form? It's form number 1, but from form number 1, those 6 verbs, which verb does this belong to? Who remembers the example? Good, it's Dhamma and Dhamma. Excellent. Can someone remember the example used that we gave in the units? Yes. Hasuna yasrun. Yes. Yahsunu, I think you mean Irfan. So hasuna yahsunu is one. Another one is karuma yakrumu. Rare bab. Okay, so dhamma is rare. This is one of them. Jaru'a yajru'u. Jur'atan. Okay, so hasuna yahsunu or karuma yakrumu is also okay to use. So jaru'a yajru'u, have the courage or be bold enough or be daring. Okay, so the human being stumbled upon the door of tomorrow, helpless, defeated. In other words, he couldn't open it, he couldn't understand it. لا يجرؤ على فتحه. See, I'm so used to ra because this form is not that common. لا يجرؤ على فتحه. He does not have the courage to open it. Fathi, right? Fath is here, it's opening or to open it. بل rather لا يجسر. Very similar meaning. جسر يجسر and جرؤ يجرؤ have the courage to do something, right? Sometimes they don't like using the same verb. So if there's another synonymous verb, they use that, the good authors. بل لا يجسر على قرعه. Rather, he doesn't even have the courage to knock it. In other words, to knock on the door. Right? Qara' means to knock. Sorry, I just want to finish this before we finish. Qara' means to knock. Right? بل لا يجسر على. Jasara ala means to have courage. It comes together. Jasara and ala. بل لا يجسر على قرعه, and it's a because of harf jar. Why? لأنه, because it is. In other words, tomorrow. لأنه باب الله, because it is the door of Allah, or it is the gateway or the knowledge of God. Wallahu, and Allah and God, لا يطلع. Sorry, that's sukun should be here. يطلع على. أطلع على, it comes together as I mentioned here in the vocab list. أطلع على is to make someone aware or to make them know or to make someone or inform someone about something. Okay. Wallahu la yutli'u ala ghaybihi ahada. It means that Allah does not reveal or Allah does not inform what? The unseen, right? Or His unseen. In other words, His unseen world or the unseen world. Ahadan, anybody. In other words, it's not accessible. Okay. Wallahu la yutli'u ala ghaybihi ahada. And Allah and God does not inform or give access to His unseen or to the unseen world anybody. Ahada. And that's it for the passage. Okay, that paragraph is done. So next week, inshallah, we'll finish the text. Okay. If you guys have some good ideas to read or any other ideas, let me know next week. Maybe you can think of it this week. I don't really have something in mind, something that we can continue with. So if you have any brilliant ideas or you've come across anything good, let me know and inshallah we can consider it. All right. Sorry for going over time. Have a good week, everyone. مع السلامة and جزاكم الله خير وإياكم.
إلى اللقاء. مع السلامة.
إلى اللقاء.